Yo.
What's going on?
Hey, Enrique. What up, Ricky?
What's up? Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome.
Ricky Tinez is the place to be, ladies and gentlemen. Ricky Tinez is the place to be.
Yes. Thanks for joining us at Perfect Chat.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for having me. I know I was just here on the Novation side of things last week, and here I am again. I saw someone leaving a comment on the Perfect Circuit Instagram. It was like, Ricky just lives at Perfect Circuit.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're like, get Ricky out of the back. It's time to do another live stream.
Well, Enrique, I always feel like, being one of the faces of Novation, we often see you doing these, demos and things, but you're doing a ton of other things, and we just thought we want to hear more about what you are doing as an artist, and we want to kind of dig in and talk about that. But
cool. Yeah, totally.
But before we do you want to tell us what you were doing there on your SP404?
Yeah, I mean, like kind of what we were saying behind the scenes earlier, I always do this to myself where I end up choosing like the hardest way. Well, I don't know if it's the hardest way. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But if I cut back here, I was just using these samples here. Got to turn that back on. I was using this kick, that kick. Right. So those are the samples that I was using. And then this was kind of a blank pad to just live grab whatever I was doing. So in this case, I ended on, right. But where that even came from was the delay. So I'll just delete that. Basically, if I have the delay set to all of these pads, if I play something, let's just set this to T2 and turn the feedback up, anything I play, we'll just start looping.
Oh, okay.
But then you can like freak it out. Right, so then this is there, and then I'd say, okay, SP404, resample everything that's going on right now onto this pad. So I'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, cut. So then I can just play that, launch another effect, and now we're just listening to this. But I did it terribly there because you can hear that weird pop. But essentially, it's just doing that over and over and over again, and then writing the feedback so that like one song or loop kind of starts fading out, which allows you to introduce a new sound. And it just kind of, it's really fun because it kind of feels like you're DJing, but then sometimes the loop you cut is like 122 BPM, but then the delay is set to 120 and I don't know how to quickly change it. So I'm just like, fade it out here, cleaning kicks, because then it starts turning into like shoes in a dryer, and it's just, it turns into a mess real fast. So, but just looping stuff in the delay. There's a million other ways to do this easier. I just don't know why I like doing this to myself.
Like put yourself in.
And the thing that I feel like happens with the 404 is that as I'm seeing you just explain what you're talking about, even if you start going into a place you weren't going to, I mean, the dope thing about the 404 is you have all those effects and kind of smooth things out, take you, give you control again over the situation. Right. So pretty dope.
Yeah, it's definitely usable in that sense. And this way, it's really scary though, because if you turn on any other effect, the delay turns off, and that's your song is living in the delay. So I have to constantly be like, resample this part before I even attempt anything else, because if I accidentally hit this button or if I accidentally turn off a loop or something, I need to be able to jump somewhere, So yeah, so it's like, oh, let me grab this loop because this would sound cool with a filter on it. So I have to grab it first, make sure it's in time. Sometimes it's not, re-grab it. Then I can apply that because then the delay's gone. And then the hard part is then taking the loop you made from the delay.
You played 4 hard things that said, but the hard part.
So you've been using this thing for a long time, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's funny because the SP taught me a lot of like how to really just learn to utilize the machine, and like get past the point of like tinkering with it and just using it. Like you have an idea in your head, let me just bang it out really quick, and I can do it. Same thing like if someone was to pick up a guitar who plays a guitar all the time, they're like, oh, I have this cool little melody, let me do versus like let me pick up a guitar and figure out where the strings are and figure out how I got to hold this, so it's like if you just get comfortable with something, it's a lot easier to use. I mean,
that's when it becomes your instrument, and it becomes used more like an instrument.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sean Cruda has a question for you. He's like, would you say the flow of the 404 helps generate the sound?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like if I play this, it's probably going to sound exactly like what we just heard. Right. It's just like a simple little loop thing. There's so many weird little random things going on in that loop. Like the delay is kind of time stretching this one section. The claps are a little off. The sample's on a 1, but the weird kick isn't. For me to have to use something else and actually think about putting all those things in, I feel like I'm myself ain't creative enough to think that far outside of the box. So that's where this kind of comes in with its happy accidents. Because like you could redo that in Ableton, but you have to know exactly where you want everything, or you could redo the Octatrack or even a looper pedal. So that's why I've been kind of thinking about getting a looper pedal, because I use this delay so much in that looping sense, but then it sucks because I can't go back. I can't like take one loop track out or something.
Oh yeah, you're committed. Once you commit, you're committed, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm always trying to grab like a backup, but then I only have one backup, so I have to delete one backup to then jump to the next. So it's still no going back. It's
pretty dope though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely say the 404 leads to that sound and texture, and oftentimes it's really digital, like in a bad way, but there's little happy mediums here and there.
Would you say like this is like well, let's just talk about your approach to music, because I know you use the MPC. Corey, you use the MPC as well. You both are like into sample chopping, and is that like one of your main approaches to making music, Enrique? Is that
I would definitely say that, and it's a constant battle with myself, like with my own I don't know, maybe like my own self-confidence, because it's like, all right, I found this cool sample and like I lay it down, chop it up, and then throw a kick on there, and I'm like, this sounds tight. Is that it? Did I even make this song? It's like the sampler conundrum, because it's like, oh, well, I can't really add anything else because there's already so much going on in the sample. Even my bass line's just going to be a sine wave with no release. So it's like I'm trying to find ways to use more synth stuff, or start with synth stuff and then find samples that go with that instead. But yeah, I don't know. Like when I made like my last Breadcrumbs EP was all MPC 4000. Maybe like the last 4 or 5, maybe like 6 tracks that I put out are all MPC 4000, and they're all just based off of a sample I found, and whether on Splice or illegally, I guess is the word for it. And yeah, it was just like, cool, that sounds cool. Let me throw some drums under it. So it's like, I guess, trying to push sampling to the next level instead of just doing like, let me just take this 1 bar loop and repeat it. How can I rearrange it and take the end of this verse and put it at the beginning of this chorus and like freak it out, flip it. You just want to flip the sample. But
yeah, for me, that actually is the thing with synths versus samples. Is I always found almost handcuffed in a sense, where my hands were tied, like you were saying, with when you sample something, the sample is telling you what it wants to be, and once you get it there, you kind of have this innate sense that it's like that is what it should be. But then I always wanted to take it further, take it somewhere else, and embellish things, and whether my musicality is on par with whatever I've sampled, or whatever the case may be. I just found that sampling synths and sampling original stuff became something that resonated with me a little more, because then I had more flexibility and I knew more about
Right.
the DNA of the music. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, it's an
And it's
interesting
crazy.
thing.
And it's crazy too, because like if you take like say, what's that song? I forget who sings it, but it's a song called Claire, and Dilla used it on Players by Slum Village.
Mhm.
Like the whole thing is really good, but when I was listening to it, I took that same Claire section and did
Mhm.
something to it, but then I was just like, man, like I'm just locked into only using this, and if I build the whole song around this one chunk, I can never take that chunk out, because as soon as I take it out, the song is just like empty, like there's nothing else
Yeah.
going on,
It sort of falls
So
Because you
apart.
built around it. Yeah. Right.
yeah, exactly. So that's like the pitfalls of it. And on Andreas from Detroit, he did, actually I think he was Slum Village's DJ, but he does like the sample Detroit with like Rick Wilhite and a lot of those really really dope, cool, like Detroit sample based house music, and they're so like he's so crazy. He'll just take a sample. At least this is what I think he's doing. I've never actually asked him, but I'm pretty sure he uses a 2K XL, samples a bunch of things, and just chops it like as many ways as possible, and just like goes through the patterns. And it's like so cool, because in one pattern, it's only on the 8th bar that like something else is replaced, but it's enough to kind of catch your attention and like keep it. But that's the other thing. It's like you just have a 1 bar disco loop. How far can you push that?
So here's the thing, though. Like when you get into, at least I found for myself that, and it was like I found that I kind of went through stages with things, especially with the MPC and sampling. When I got to that point where I was just speaking about, then I started realizing I need to sharpen my sword a little bit more with chopping samples in unconventional ways, not necessarily, by bar and you know what I mean? Like making 16 chops out of 2 bars, you know what I'm saying? Like I started doing different types of chops, and then even micro chopping. And then what that would do is it would give me, like, even if you kind of keep things in a certain order, almost like the way the record was, where it's almost like a loop, then when it came time for me to do a next sequence, I can kind of mix up the samples and mix up the chops, play different patterns on the chop to try to get other expressiveness out of it. And then that started allowing me to be able to play synths and other stuff on top of things, because they all of a sudden were like started being mixed up. But but you know who? There's some people that do that so well that, like, always, and I think we talked about it before, how I remember hearing that Dilla he made a bass line out of 3 or 4 different records, and it was from a Bilal album, and he took a chop of a bass line from one thing, and then he knew the other chop that would work with it, and walked through the studio, found the record, and it was an upright, where the other one was an electric bass. They sampled this couple notes from an upright bass and threw that on there, and then another thing. And if you listen to the bass line, it kind of sounds like towards the end of the phrase, it kind of starts falling off, but then the loop starts over, and it seems so cohesive. I mean, that's truly genius and simple when you think about it, though. You know what I mean? But you gotta know your samples and have that dexterity with that stuff.
Right.
And you gotta be a really good listener too. I mean, like, to listen for all small, like, intricate pieces of what you wanna grab.
Yeah, and I think that's a wild thing too, because you kind of like end up in a world where you can't, like, you literally cannot listen to music the same way most other people do. You know, it's almost like if a sculptor goes to a museum, they see a sculpture in a completely different way than just like the avid museum goer. It's like, even now, if I go to a club and somebody's DJing, I'm just listening to like maybe a kick's kind of falling off. I'm like, oh, that record's too slow, and I'm just like, dude, just enjoy being here.
You can't do that though, because your mind becomes so tied in to that kind of stuff. Do you find too that you get into, and this is for both you guys, do you find like you get into seasons of making music where you might miss almost entire eras of somebody might tell you a year later, like, yo, it was like that one album or that one thing that was being played a lot, and you'll be like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. It's because you've been in the studio for a year straight. I've literally missed eras of people that I've gone back and been like, damn, this is dope. When did this happen? And people were like, that was 5 years ago when you were busy doing XYZ. You find you get into those kinds of things like that?
Yeah, a little.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it goes in waves. I'll go like maybe like 3 weeks to a month of like making music every day or every other day, and like by the time I'm done, I don't want to listen to anything. Like I love silence, you know. It's like my favorite thing. But then sometimes when I'm not making music, I'm just listening to a bunch, kind of like refilling the inspiration glass, and then taking my time sipping from it for a month until it runs out, and then I'm back into my music. But yeah, it's exactly that, where you're like, wait, how many albums did so and so come up with? Like,
right.
Right. You're like, when did that shit come out?
You mentioned inspiration, and I'm always curious how other people get their inspiration, because sometimes I can feel uninspired to actually sit down and compose things and make things. But then if I strip stuff down and just say, you know what, I'm going to experiment with this oscillator and this effects pedal and just kind of see what happens. Or I'll put an effects chain together, tape delay and a reverb and something else, and just run something that I wouldn't typically use through it. All of a sudden, I'm inspired all over the place. What's that sort of process look like for you when you do you have a thing like that where you kind of go through something where you're like, I'm not inspired to really make stuff, but I'll sound design or I'll do something else that'll get
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like Andrew Hong had a really good video on this where he's just like, sit down and just do sound design with no purpose of making music. And that spoke to me a lot, because it's exactly that, where you're just like, let me just gather a bunch of sounds and just do anything. I mean, that's one reason why I really like we were talking about this last week, Shonda, with the tracker. Where I'm like, when I don't want to make music, I'll use the tracker to make music, because it feels so different than actually the way I normally make music, that I'm like, oh, I'm still making music, but it's not being the same way that I normally do things. And
it does feel totally different. I've been playing with it. It's like it is like a game.
It's like weirdly addictive, because it's just like, I just want to understand this thing. I'm just like, what? You know, like, what is this thing doing? You know, it's like trying to do something simple and it might take a second, and then you're like, oh, let me just put a hi-hat on 1, 5, 9, and 13, and then like somehow you accidentally grabbed the samples and chopped it up, and you're like, okay, that's cool too. Sure, let's. Like, oops, but I'll just jot that one up as purposeful. Yeah, but yeah, just I think keeping things interesting. Like I have my Pro 3 over here, and I kind of swapped that. I mean, I've been living on the Pro 3 forever, basically since I got it. But I used to try and swap things out just to kind of like re-inspire yourself, and it's kind of the novelty, you know, of using something new. It's like, oh, let me just change one thing up a little bit so that my brain's kind of more active and like, oh, right, there's something new here. Let me around on this thing for a little bit.
That's what I love about effects pedals, and any kind of effects boxes, because that will reinvigorate almost anything. Like I'll not mess with, say, the Matrix Brute for a while, and then I'll think like, well, let me throw a different effects pedal on there and use the internal effects with that in conjunction. And then all of a sudden it becomes something that I feel like I've never heard before. Right. All new inspiration. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. And like, man, this is like embarrassing to say, but like when I was making music, like years and years ago, maybe like 9, 10 years ago, probably even like 11 years ago, I was like, so for whatever reason, this is so dumb, I was so like anti-effects. I don't know why. I was just like, nah, it's got to sound good right from the source, you know? And then I'm like using like a monophonic analog synth, and I'm like, man, how are these dudes getting like these big glassy DX7 chords that sound like they're just in this giant cathedral, and I'm over here like, meh.
Right.
And then I hit like a delay. I hit a delay pedal once, and I was like, oh yeah.
Like, there it is.
Literally impossible without this thing. Yeah.
I remember almost getting into. Oh, go ahead.
I was just, before we get too far away from, because you said 11 years ago, I want to kind of rewind a little bit and tell us, like, how did you get into making music? Like, what's the beginning? What was the beginning of your journey?
I like it. Let's go that path.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so long ago. I remember being in kindergarten and playing the like big old drum on the red wagon. When they're pulling it during the marching band. I was either one slapping the drum or the one pulling the wagon. And I remember one time we did this parade in San Francisco, and I had to go to the bathroom really bad, so I ran to a Burger King, and the line was super long, and then the door closed, and I didn't have the code, and like it turned into this huge thing. And I eventually lost my band because there was like a ton of bands. So I'm just like running around San Francisco in like my huge outfit with the hat on, like, looking for anybody who looks familiar. It's like the scariest moment of my life. Yeah, so basically I started back in kindergarten with stuff like that. I did violin. I tried trombone, which I missed a lot. Then eventually did the whole band thing. Was in a band for maybe like 4 years. Probably from ages like 14 to 18.
Okay.
And then during that, we had my buddy Andy, he played a Nord. And I was like, anytime we would take a break, I would just be on the Nord. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then eventually I think I got Reason. I was using Reason for a long time. And I was like, oh, this is way easier to make music than with like 8 or 6 people. I can just do whatever I want all day long, like on time, So started doing that, and then getting into more gear. Went the Ableton Live route, and yeah, I guess the rest was history. Really, I still don't know how all this happened. Like it just showed up one day. Feels like
that's how it happens. Space and then stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So that's dope. How'd you end up starting your YouTube thing? Like, what was the thought process? And like, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, what got me to start the YouTube channel is right like before working at Novation, I was doing a lot of like PA work and like driving around the camera truck, and I loved being on set and filming a lot. And when I got hired at Novation as a part of like the rebrand back in 2015, and I was like, hey, we don't really have like the best YouTube presence, and YouTube is really powerful. It's like the second biggest search engine in the world. We got to get some stuff that's like, cool and people want to watch or whatever. And it turned into like a long thing of like, well, we're based in London, so we have to deal with the time difference, and then I have to send the clips over there. But I was like, I'll just do it on my own, guerrilla style, under my name, but just like for the company, like because nobody does circuit videos. Let me just put a couple out there. And so a bunch of my first videos were Novation, almost Novation only videos, except for like a Stilson Hammer Mark II one. But eventually they're like, oh, you know what you're doing, do our videos. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I started doing our videos, but I had so much fun filming and like just, filming and editing and talking about synthesizers that I was like, well, I have a ton of other gear. Let me just talk about this stuff too. I know I'm not the most loud and rambunctious and, silly YouTuber, which was like I was a little worried that nothing would work, because I was just me and my monotone self, I guess. And yeah, but it's just doing all right. I was pretty tight. And I'm seeing some people in the chat that I recognize from the channel, which is dope. What's up, Hum Radio? Appreciate the support.
Well, what's dope about the thing I think that people find where you find success, or at least kind of find your lane on YouTube, is when you're being yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the key. Like you could see all these videos and even the way people take certain pictures for their videos and, even the different moods and vibes of everybody's different channels and stuff. And you can't worry about that stuff. And you can't worry about the downvotes and the thumbs downs and stuff. You got to just do you. And I think you found that groove where you're like, this is how I am and this is what I do. And I'll let you in so you can kind of see, my thoughts on this stuff.
Yeah, you're the Bob Ross of synths, with your
Yeah, wear that title proud.
yeah.
No doubt.
The way you present your channel, it's very inviting, makes you want to like stop and listen. And I agree with what Corey was saying. You definitely need to stay in your own lane, and I think you're doing it well, for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's really nice of you.
And how long have you been doing your YouTube channel?
I want to say 2.5 years now. I think I started in 2018, like March or February 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Like actually trying at least, because I did like the Stilson Hammer video at some random point, worst video ever. But like I was like no talking. I was like, let me just type what I'm doing, but trying to type what a crazy sequencer is doing like quickly and actually make it coherent.
That's right.
Yeah, I was just like, do I abbreviate everything? I was like, no, then it just looks like some cheat codes,
That's right. It's all shorthand, and you're right.
Like I'm literally going to be the only person who understands this. Yeah,
that's right.
So
well, at least you'll be able to kind of have your beer and look at everybody like, you don't know. Inside joke between me and the Stilson Hammer.
Right.
June said it's all your fault for all the modular stuff purchased.
Oh man, I am so sorry. Please forgive me. Yeah, it's also my own fault too, because I just keep wanting to learn and explore this stuff. So it's like, oh well, I don't want to hit this company up and ask for free things. I'll just go to and just buy it, whatever. Like, because I just want to mess around with it. But then it just gives me the freedom to also say whatever the heck I want.
That's true. Yeah. Not beholden to anybody. What do you think the pieces that what do you think the top, say, 3 pieces? I could think of one right off the top that has probably been in your videos the most. Not necessarily the thing that you're featuring, but that's been in your videos the most.
Yeah, what's the one that you would say?
404.
The circuit.
Yeah. Dang, yeah. Those are, it's so funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I love the 404, but I rarely use it to make, like, there's 2 areas of my brain, I think, because it's like I love the Octatrack, I love the 1000 and the 404, but I almost never use them to actually make music. I use them to play live, but not so much to make music. But when it comes to making music, it's like a completely different set of machines that I would never use live.
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of tricky, but yeah, I love the 404. Just because it ends up with some weird results. I call it a Rubik's Cube because you're constantly like, well, let me shift this down here, put this thing there, which will give me some space over here to do something. Oh, but now I got to delete something. So you're constantly kind of moving around. Yeah, it's hard to find gear that kind of, at least for me, that transcends both of those spaces, right? But yeah, I'd say top 3 is kind of tough, but I'd say Pro 3, Peak, and basically any MPC for making music. And then when it comes to live, 404, Circuit, or Digitact. Majority of the time I choose Circuit's a little faster for me, and then the Octatrack.
I was going to say the Octatrack. Yeah.
No doubt.
I think that's like one of the first times we ever hung out when we did like.
Oh yeah.
We had our tacos and the Octatrack.
Yeah. Vegan tacos with bacon on it is your own.
Yeah.
Classic. Cashier looks at you all crazy.
Yeah, I miss those hangouts soon, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So Enrique, I want to ask, I'm sure some people in the chat are dying to know as well. And also I just want to kind of touch base with the chat really quick. All the viewers, thank you for tuning in with us. I know if you have questions, please drop them in the chat so we can make sure we get them to Ricky. And yeah, I want to ask the big question. Star Wars, let's talk about it. The Star Wars, the rise of Skywalker. How did it all happen? What the first connection?
I'd say extreme luck, extreme timing. The first connection would be I think it was an Octatrack video. Now that I think about it, so thank you, Electron. Yeah, so I did an Octatrack video, and I remember chilling. I think it was on my couch, and like my phone rang. That was like, "Hey, you got a new order from JJ Abrams for a hat." And I was like, "Oh, that's funny, cool name, dude." You know, and like I'm packing it up, and I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, I think this is actually to JJ Abrams because it was here in LA." And I was just like, "Oh, well, just in case, let me write a note." So I was just like, "Hey, thanks, blah blah blah. If you want to talk Kajimi, you know where to find me," and put it in there, sent it to him, and spelled my email wrong, like total loser. And eventually he found my email. And we just kind of started chatting, had a bunch of similar interests. He was interested.
That's wild, though. I hate to pause you right there, but what are the odds, like in a moment like that, in that interaction, that you spell your own email wrong?
Dude, the worst part is I wrote that note twice, and I'm sure on the first one it was right, and on the second one is probably where I screwed up because I got too comfortable. Like, oh yeah, I got
that's
this.
right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then, like,
Wait, what hat did he buy? What hat was it?
It was a MIDI in out through hat, like that hat, kind of like this one, yeah, but just the little ports on there. But yeah, so we kind of like a bunch of things were happening. I was going to London for the Novation thing. He was working on Star Wars clearly, and we eventually kind of lined up, our schedules aligned, and I went over to Fox where they were kind of working on the movie, and he's like, "Oh, let's write something for Star Wars for a bar scene." I was like, "Okay, cool, yeah. Oh, who would? Yeah, yes, sir. Let's go."
Of course.
Like,
okay, with the scene. You had me at Star Wars.
Yeah, which is still so crazy, which is absolutely nuts. But yeah, I mean, that's basically what happened. We worked on it for a while and threw some ideas back and forth. Tried to for sure have the Kajimi on there because it was on the planet Kajimi.
Of course,
so, yeah,
of course.
We're just having fun with it. JJ's such a cool dude because he's just as big of a synth nerd as I am, or any of us are, really. So
very cool.
Dope, yeah.
I kind of love that thing, that there's a thread there with synth nerds and people that are into synths, like, and there's people that you would never imagine into synths, and like it's kind of cool because that you run across these people, you'll have something in common with them that'll be something very niche and that's very much out of, like, it's not like shoes, for instance, you know what I mean, or beer or IPAs. Like, it's like if you find somebody that's into synths, that's a very specific sort of thing. And there's certain big named people and maybe lesser known comedians and all kinds of stuff that are into synths. So it's cool to kind of find that common ground with somebody that has a big profile too.
Yeah, and he's just like he's just like crazy inspiring to be around because he like cares so much about whatever he is doing. Like he just goes deep with it, and like basically even the story of the planet being called the Kajimi is basically like when you look back at old movies, synthesizers were always named after like sci-fi movie planets. So this time he's like, oh, let's kind of like flip the script and planet after a synth, so it's like, yeah. And like looking back at a lot of his other work, you'll find like little synth references here and there. So it's just like so cool that he's like, this is what I do, and I love it, but this is also something I love, and I'm just trying to like bridge the two worlds together, so it's just inspiring to see that no matter what level of crazy, insane busyness that you are at, you can still have your passions and truly care about something and not have to give up things, which is dope.
Nice. Yeah. I'm sure Black Corporation was extremely happy too, about the
Roman. Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you, have you ever, is there like a synth or a groove box that you've gotten and maybe the initial thought was like, I'm maybe not into it, but then later down the line, it became one of your most used or favorite things in a certain season or something?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, for sure, the Octatrack, because that, like, I remember I was like, this is awesome. And then I used it. I was like, no idea what I'm doing. Put it on the shelf. You know, came back to it like 2 months later because someone was like, hey, I'm having trouble with the Octatrack. And I was like, oh, yeah, I have one of those. I completely forgot. So, like, I brought it down, started messing with it again. I was like, oh, my God, you could do so much with this thing. Like, what have I been doing? And then, again, just kind of like lost interest in it because it was like too convoluted to use, shelved it again for a couple months. And, like, I want to say it took me like a solid year and a half to finally be like, oh, I think I really like this thing, you know? But it's that initial, like, I don't want to say it's a year, but it felt like a year that I was just like, I don't know about this thing, or like, I don't use it. It's too complicated, because I just wanted to make music. I didn't want to learn about how to make music. You know, I was already
you don't want to have to think about the utility of the thing when you're in a creative mood. Let me also ask you, kind of in relation to that too, though, was that your first Electron box?
Yeah, it was.
So I had a similar experience with the Rhythm. When I got the Rhythm, I mean, my eyes were like this big about the Rhythm when the MK1, when it first came out, and I spent the money. I was like, I gotta have it. Everybody move aside. And I brought the thing home, and it sounded cool, and I kind of dug in a little bit, but I noticed I just didn't use it much, and I was just kind of like, oh, I'm going to send this back, but I had missed the return period. And so I ended up keeping it, and then it just sat there again for like months. But then when I finally dug in, it was like my mind was blown, because, you know, I didn't want to necessarily have to go into learning about these trigs and conditional this, that, or the other, and all this different stuff. And the Electron way, you kind of have to give yourself a bit to the Electron way in order to.
Like you make it sound so culty, but
it really is. It has a way. This thing lives and breathes like it. It's like when you get a pet. You're like, you can't take care of your cat the way you take care of your dog. You know what I mean? You're not going to be approaching an Electron box or you approach an NPC. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
I know, and that's the thing. Like, I've been trying to boil this down, because one of my buddies is like all about the NPC Live, and I've borrowed, and now he's onto the Force, and I know you've been trying to get me onto the Force also. And like, I've borrowed a Live twice for like about a week. I mean, I only probably used it a total maybe an hour and a half throughout the week, but I like just couldn't get into it. But the crazy thing is, like, with the Live or the NPC one, I know for a fact it's way more powerful than anything I have. And I wonder, I constantly think, I wonder if I'm just scared of getting it, because I know it's going to change the way I make music. So
that's right.
You know, I'm like, do I really want to just disrupt everything and just flip this desk and get to a part or something? Like, you know, I feel like I'm almost scared of change, and I'm just set in my
I get it. That is precisely why I don't have an Octatrack. Trovarsi knows I've talked about getting an Octatrack many times, even mentioned it to different people, and then I'm just kind of like, no, I'll just kind of not do that, because I kind of feel like in order to really get into it, I'm going to have to give myself to it, and then it's going to become the center of my universe, and it's going to wreck everything for me. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I remember Enrique was like, it stuck with me. So then it like made the journey a lot easier. You were like, just take it in small sips.
Yeah.
And then like get specific with it. Like, meaning like pick a task that you want to master using it, and then do that. And that with doing that and then changing the task multiple times. Now, you know, I really enjoy using it, you know.
Yeah, it's such a tricky one.
At first. Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, you know, am I just being naive and comfortable, which I am? And at what point am I like the guy with the shovel while everyone's using a bulldozer? And I'm like, no, this is fine. I swear. Like, this is okay. You know, when they're like, dude, just learn this thing for like a week, and like one scoop is 1,000 shovels.
Yeah, you know? But, you know, I saw a YouTube video of a dude make an entire swimming pool with grotto and everything with one little shovel in his bare hands. Yeah. And it was the best thing I'd ever seen. So sometimes
when it's called for, yeah.
That's right. Sometimes it's very necessary, and you can get your hands really down in there. It's good.
or you can just use both. Like there's no harm in
That's
that
true.
either.
That's
Get
true.
the heavy lifting done, literally, and then get all the fine details out with a little chisel.
There you go. That's right. That's right.
You know?
Best of both worlds.
Some people in the chat are shouting out like MPC1 is the one, and like in Electron. I think I've used Electron so much that when I did that MPC1 video, it was, I mean, there's so many different workflows. It's just like once you get used to working in a certain way, it is really hard to kind of make that shift, you know. But
Yeah.
I mean, they both have, you know, have their pros and cons, I guess, you know.
Yeah. And then almost like, I'm sure you've experienced this too, Corey, where it's like subconsciously, if you're using a whole different sample, you're like, okay, so how do I get this to sound like my MPC?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, no doubt. That's right. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I end up doing with different samplers too. Because like when I got the Digitact, I was like, this isn't an MPC 1000. And it's like, well, of course it's not. Like,
Yeah,
it's
of course.
never meant to be, you know? So in a weird way, you get let down, and then you eventually kind of figure out the new things you could do with it too.
Right.
You know?
And you know what's dope about that is that you tend to, it's cool when you allow yourself, and I think it's kind of like what you guys were just talking about with the tracker, when you kind of allow yourself to let the things sort of guide you a bit. You know what I mean? The workflow kind of dictates, because there's different machines I create totally differently on. Like if I pulled my Digitone down and I started using the Digitone, I would make something that I would, and even if I had like a FM synth and another sequencer, I still wouldn't create the same type of music that I do on a Digitone. You know what I mean? It's just kind of, you know, and it's cool to kind of allow that to happen.
Enrique, there's a question in the chat. I'm going to pop it up here. So is there an effect pedal or module that you can't live without, or something that sort of enhances your synths that you use?
I don't know. I'd say there's a bunch of things. Like as far as effects pedals that I've been using a lot, the Zen Delay and then the Mercury 7 I've been using a lot, and just trying to run weird things I normally wouldn't run through them ends up sounding cool. Like I was working on a track yesterday or 2 days ago where I was running the Avalon through the Mercury 7 with like the pitch down effect. And it was creating this like weird voice in the background. I was just like, that is creepy, but I'm going to just record it before it goes away. And I was like, I literally have no idea what it's, because it was like sliding up, but then like the reverb was pitching down. It was just like, like, I remember taking my headphones off being like, wait, somebody in the house? Like, it was like so far back in the mix, but like you'd only catch it once in a while.
Right.
But I really, the Zen Delay, like anyone who I've shown it to, like, you know, some of my producer friends are like, oh my God, this thing, because it's just so playable, but it leaves a lot to be wanted. Like I wish the filter had an LFO on the filter or some envelope weirdness that can be modulated somewhere, but it's very playable. So that's the good part.
Okay.
You know, but yeah, I really like the Zen Delay a lot. Yeah.
Dope.
Yeah, I had a chance to play with it a little bit. It is pretty dope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question for you too. So what ducking effect do you use, with a pedal or module compressor of your choice, like for sidechain, I guess? I popped it up there.
Yeah. I've been messing around with the comp, the new 2HP compressor module.
Oh, okay.
That one's been really fun to use when it comes to the modular world. But honestly, like in my default Ableton live set, when I go to make music, there's 10 tracks that are all MPC 3000. Track one's always my kick, and then that on the Pro 3 channel 7 and 8 of the MPC, which is always a sample, and then on the Peak channel and Deckard's channel, there's always just the side chain or the compressor set to side chain. And I think my ratio is set to like something insane, like 20-1, almost no attack, and like a decent release. Yeah, but it's cool because then you can just drive the kick and it squashes things harder or not. But it's such, I don't know, like I always go back and forth too. How do you do it, Corey or Shonda, where when you're making music, are you mixing as you go, or do you deal with that later?
Yeah, I mix
Most
it.
times,
One thing I learned. Oh, sorry, Corey. One thing I learned is you have to do those surgical steps as you're producing.
Right.
Mixing as you're laying out your tracks, for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely like that. Like while I'm making the music, I'm sort of mixing along. Because the thing is, you'll just some things may not sit right, and once it starts to sit right, once you kind of get in a certain pocket for certain instruments, a certain whatever it might be, melodies and stuff, then it kind of inspires the next thing, and then like you can kind of hear what the thing is. You know what I mean?
Right.
I really like getting it there in the box that I'm working on. And the more flexibility I have along those lines, the better for me.
Oh,
and because quite frankly, I got to tell you, I've earlier on gone through, just problems with like when you track stuff out after you've spent your time producing it, and you track stuff out, and now you got to get it all to glue again, and you know what I mean? It's like, and it also almost becomes like more of a problem that way, and so. It just kind of depends on what it is I'm doing, but most times I'm mixing as I'm producing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
nice. I kind of do the same, but then I try not to like get too lost into it, because then I'm like the idea of what I was working on.
Right.
Is gone. No, I totally get that where it's like, oh, this kick is tight, but it's like way on top of everything, and like I can't focus. It's just like punching me in the head.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly.
Let me just pull this down really quick. Like that's enough.
I think it really depends too, like how your approach to making the music, the song that you're working on. Like if you're recording live, it is best to, set your levels and do that sort of mixing as you're recording in. But I've always learned that it's important to make those surgical changes and mix it as you're producing, especially if you're doing it in a DAW, because if you go back later, like say you get like you're almost done and then you realize like the kick is too loud or whatever, once you pull that out, it changes the whole dynamic of your track. You pull out one element and you're pulling that frequency out, and other elements are starting to take over that frequency, so change everything, and then all of a sudden you're going backwards and you're like, oh shit, now I gotta change that.
That's right. It's true. It becomes a slippery slope.
I've done that before.
Flip the table and walk out of there.
I know, right? Where you feel like your track is like evolved like into 5 different songs, and you're not done. Yeah.
That's why I typically end up in the other room on the couch, like, what y'all watching?
That's funny.
So funny. There's a question for you. Do you layer drum sounds in Eurorack with your MPC or Ableton for your live rig?
For live, no, I don't. For live, I just try to get all my my drum samples into the MPC layered like already ahead of time. That way I don't have to worry about the connection and possibly something going wrong with the connection, and then worrying about gain staging for those 2 different sources, and like making sure that they stay consistent
and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Because like, well, when I play live with the Euro case now, it's only doing like one thing, which is like baseline stuff. But I have the 7U performance case, the IntelliGel one, and that one I want to turn into like just I guess what it's called, the performance case, and just perform with just it. I think would be really cool. But even then, like you're limited to so much space and this and the next. But it's like there's just to me mentally, there's just less things to worry about when you have less things out on the table. And I mean, like, dude, I've been to shows where people will have like 3 tables worth and a 3-tier like keyboard stand, but they're like
that's
yeah, I'm like, but the whole time they're like on an Electribe and a KP3, just like going to and I'm like, are they even on? Like,
what about this?
Yeah, exactly. Literally, yeah. So it's just like, okay, so how do I not do that? Because that's scary to take all that stuff out and whatnot. So yeah, it's exactly what Space Racer is saying. Like, it's so hard to normalize it. It is, but when you could find things to layer and kind of consolidate everything down, I think that's where it's key. That's why I just love samplers. You could sample whatever, literally whatever, and just layer it however many times you want and just pull it back at a moment's notice.
Cool. There's a couple other questions too I want to kind of get from the chat here. Let me just kind of backtrack. Sorry. So someone asked, like, what type of distortion? What's your favorite distortion methods? Do you have any? Do you have any favorite? If
I
any?
clip a lot in the 3K, the MPC 3000 for drums. That's an easy one. I've used the auto boom. I used to use that a lot, especially in the live situation. That was really fun. Just helps glue everything together. And then honestly, drum bus in Ableton Live is really good, like way better than I anticipated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that,
What's the
not
one we were talking about the other day that you said that you liked? It was the very good.
oh yeah, the RNLA, the really nice limiting amplifier by FMR. Yeah, it's a small company based out in Austin, I think, but they have the RNC, not the Republican National Committee, but the really nice compressor, and then the RNLA. And those two are really good. I like the RNLA more than the RNC because I felt that it could squash the sound a bit harder. And then the RNC is really good too. But those are more of like compressor squashers. You can't really overdrive them too much. And if you want another good side chain that's dirt cheap, like you can find these. So I think I got mine for like $40-$50, but the Alesis 3630, it's the old Daft Punk compressor. Yeah, it's like a piece of garbage, but that's what makes it cool, you know.
I literally have that in the rack because it is that kind of dirty compressor that sometimes you just want to throw on and, you know, have that flavor. It definitely has a flavor of its own. Yeah,
it definitely does. And that's the fun part too, when you're mixing with a compressor kind of slammed, like you're saying, Shonda, where like you change the kick, it's like, oh, now everything's moving differently because this kick has other frequencies that are hogging headroom and pushing things around, you know.
Right.
So it can be fun and annoying to mix with a compressor on.
So someone asked too, are there any other instruments that you play, like besides synths, that you sample to make music with?
I'm borrowing this hi-hat and this I've been sampling a lot of percussion stuff, like these little bongos.
Nice.
It's just fun because it's like, let me throw in really super quantized drums that are supposed to sound like drums but totally don't, like CR78 or something, but then add an organic line to it and it changes everything.
I love that. I do that with hi-hats a lot. That kind of makes the idea of playing a hi-hat. It seems kind of strange at first. You're like, there's nothing here but a hi-hat and a mic.
Literally.
Play that over what you've composed, then it kind of brings this human vibe to things.
Right.
100%.
Pull.
Yeah, who's really good at that is Theo Parrish, another Detroit DJ. Like he does like really like super solid, groovy, kind of a little bit of swing, quantized beats, but then there's just like loose insanity on top of all of it. And sometimes stuff is running on like a weird 3/4, but the main beat is 4/4, and it's just like exploration of sound, and then they'll have singers on top, and it's just so good, like so good.
That's dope.
But yeah, I would sample a lot of this stuff, and then I also bought the Nord Electro 6D because I've been wanting to learn how to play the piano more, and that is super fun to just be like, oh, this chord sounds nice as a Rhodes, hit record on the 3000, boom, and then like pitch it around on the 3K. And kind of like what you were saying earlier, Corey, you know where the chord came from, so if it's not working, you kind of go back and like change it up a bit. And
exactly.
Very cool.
I love that kind of stuff. It's kind of, that's the DNA of the music that you're doing. It's like that's what's so dope about samples, because if you're sampling something that you've played, then you have a lot of freedom there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And then when you put it into a sampler or something, and you can turn it into something different than even what you thought it was. And that's the kind of stuff I do. That kind of stuff that it ends up inspiring, even if I'm not coming into the room inspired. So,
dude. There's this crazy good, well, let's see what this one says. Piggybacking off the instrument question, do you ever record whistling in your tracks? I have once on my phone when I was in New York. There was like a cool reverb, and I just whistled at like 3 different pitches and then pitched it down later to see what would happen. I didn't end up using it in the track, but it did sound kind of crazy. Yeah, but in terms of like sampling and resampling, there's this guy named Josh Spoon. He's like one of the Ableton certified trainers. I think he's here in LA too. He has a crazy good Ableton, like those old like Ableton one trick or like one thing video. Like he has one where he's like, I just sampled myself, lays down like the sickest track you've ever heard, and then just like resamples it and turns it into like an even sicker track than the one you just like, where's my laptop? Where's my sample?
Right.
Move everything out the way. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. You gotta love that, man.
Very
That's
cool.
funny.
Let's see. There's somebody asked, what's your thoughts on Behringer modules? And here, let me pop it up there. It's a big one. Let's see. So what's your thoughts? Just realize that you do not have videos related to those things.
I haven't used any of the Behringer modules before. I haven't even seen them, to be honest. I didn't know. I heard that they were going to start like replicating a lot of the Dopefer style modules at some point, but I haven't seen any of them. I have the MS 101, the red one, and I bought that one because it was pre-lawsuit, so it still has the MS 101 versus the MS1 on it. So I was like, oh, cool, collector's item. So
that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't use any Behringer stuff. I have one of their mixers, the 1002B. That's pretty good, but I end up just using a Mackie. So yeah, I don't have too many Behringer things. Yeah.
Cool.
I guess that's it. Yeah.
I just want to check in with the chat to see if there's any other questions that anyone has for Enrique, and just want to say thank you for hanging out with us. We're at the top.
Always good, bro.
Yeah. I know. It's nice.
Thanks for having me. Seriously, it's cool.
Thank you for coming on. Really, it's nice to get a chance to catch up and dig into these other things that you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, keeping all the plates spinning.
No doubt. And it's sounding good while you're doing it too, bro.
Yep.
Thank you.
Let's see. What are your thoughts on Overbridge? Somebody was asking about. Have you been using that in the box or?
Yes. Everything needs Overbridge. It is so awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, like it's so cool because like that's one thing that keeps the Digitact around, because it's like if I come up with a weird idea, like for example that loop I played on the SP earlier, oh man, what I would do to be able to take each of those elements out and just track them in and be like, cool, let me just take the kick out here and then put it back, like so easily, and that's what like the Digitact can do. I wish it would show up on the Octatrack, but we all know that's not going to happen.
Right.
But yeah, I love Overbridge. It works so well. The timing is really tight, and it compensates for its own delay really well. I mean, I feel like that's not fully to the extent, but that's maybe the realm that I would hope MIDI 2.0 goes in, where it's like a lot tighter of a communication, more two-way as opposed to one-way. Like, I'm sending you this, hopefully you're catching it, and then the other person's like, I'm trying to catch something you're not sending. So it's like there's just this disconnect. So I'm hoping that can bring in a lot tighter timing and clocking and whatnot.
Yeah, dude, I love Overbridge. When it was still beta, I was so risky, but I played so many live sets using the beta.
But you don't care about those kind of risks, though. When I met you, you were holding up a new piece of gear like, I just bought this. I'm gonna play with it tomorrow.
I know.
Live in my show, like that. That's how you get down.
I know. I feel like I've seen Trovarsi. I feel like I've seen you like screwing in a module backstage, like before we're about to go on. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, are you fixing it? She's like, no, I just got it on the way here. By the store.
I don't think I've ever played with the same set more than once in a row. Like, I mean, the same specific pieces of gear. I know it's terrible.
This is just the way you work.
Laughing.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised that you've played with a beta of the Overbridge that way. That's kind of it's part of the course.
Yeah, I I remember not updating my studio laptop forever because the Overbridge stopped working on like the newer version of Macs or whatever. So I was just like, I ain't touching anything. Oh, and I didn't update my Digitac either. Yeah, I was just like, this works right now. Like,
It's gonna be like that.
until it's completed, I'm not touching this at all. Yeah.
That's what's up.
Oh man, I'm so glad we did this. One more question before we. Someone asked, "Are you using analog heat at all, or have you?"
I did use the heat and I sold it. I had the Mark One. I just like it was cool, but I never went past like the first two things. You know, it was like warm and boost or whatever. Everything else was just like no man's land for me. I was just like, this makes no sense. And then everything else that it could do, it didn't have a compressor, which is kind of why I wanted it. I was kind of like faking a compressor with the envelope follower, and I was like, dude, what am I doing? This is $800 for something that I'm not really using. What else can I do? You know, and it's like you could buy an RNLA, an SP404, any distortion pedal, some effects pedal for the price of one thing. So sure, it has overbridge. Like if you didn't have anything, it's cool that it does the audio interface. Like you can use it as just like synth recording thing. Cool, but I don't need that at all. So for what it was providing me, I didn't find that it was worth the $800. The Mark II looks cool, but I'm afraid I would end up falling in that same predicament where I'm just like, why'd I do this? You know?
Yeah.
Totally.
It's not very much different than the Mark One. I never thought. I was always kind of like, I don't know if that was a significant enough upgrade. But you're right, and I've heard a lot of people do that with the heat. Specifically.
Yeah. I had it as well, and I sold it. I felt the same way that you said. Just for the type of music for what I wanted to do, it didn't. I agree with you for sure. Okay,
right.
I'm gonna send one more question, but I saw this question and
cool. It's awesome.
on your channel, I thought it would be it's a really good question. I wanted to get it in there. So how do you pick your video subjects and map out your content, and like what's your approach with that?
What's up, Aussie Digi? Thanks for the question. I see you all the time on the channel as well. Thanks for the support. I see a bunch of these people on the channel. Thank you everybody for the support. Seriously. But yeah, as far as like mapping out content, I want to say unless I'm going on like a trip that I know of where I'm not going to be able to film anything, like I'll film stuff ahead of time. But I usually just kind of do it on a per week basis, like put the video out on Saturday and then chill. That's like my real chill day. Sunday, I'm like, okay, what do I want to film next week? You know, and just kind of pull some things out. And I think that's a great thing about doing these music style exploratory, because like a lot of my videos, I just do one take. I'm just like, whatever happens, happens. I don't know what's going to happen, you know, especially when it comes to like the synthesis ones where I'm like, this is the idea in my head. I think the LFO should sound like this. Hopefully that happens. Let's hit record and see if it does. You know, but the best part about that is it removes all the days of research because I'm just doing the research as like with the cameras rolling.
Nice.
So because of that, I don't need to prepare and schedule too far ahead because I still have a 9 to 5. I still have a bunch of other projects. I'm still trying to release music and, you know, so it's like, what's the least amount of effort I can put into making a video while still trying to make a good video. So yeah, it's basically like on a week-to-week basis. I don't really plan things out too much, and I kind of just go by with whatever I'm messing with. Like the LFO video that I did recently, I was just making a patch where I ended up doing. I was like, holy crap, this sounds cool. Let me grab the cameras and record this. And then the same thing, like this week is going to be on the Pro 3, kind of exploring some of the ways I use it when I make music and more modulation stuff. And then I'm thinking pocket operator stuff for the following week, just because like I've been cleaning around the house and I found a pile of pocket operators in a box. So I'm like, let's see what I can do with these things. Hopefully these are cool, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, those are dope. Tiny but mighty for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a system, those things knock. They're crazy.
That's the surprise though. Like I think some people will be surprised that who haven't messed with those. Because I mean, honestly, I don't dig the size. I don't dig I got big hands, right? So I don't think the size is kind of twiddly. But when you plug it up to like studio monitors or something, you're like, oh, it makes
you could blow some stuff out easily.
You really could.
Eardrums
It'll
included.
change your mind.
All right. Well, Enrique, one more thing. Any new music coming out? Anything you want to tell us that you have coming out? Anything on the horizon that you live stream?
More live streams? Yeah, I'd love to do some more of those. It's cool that YouTube's doing the little like membership thing now where you can like join a channel. So I kind of want to toy with that idea. You know, I hate asking people for money. And then on top of that, in my head, it turns what I like to do into a job because I'm trying to like provide stuff for people when it's really like, I'm just chilling here. If you want to walk through the door and hang out, come on by, you know? But I kind of want to explore that idea. It's just sometimes it's kind of tough because I get picky with the way my videos look. And then the live streams, it's like a little trickier to get them to look the way I want them to. So it's like, man, do I want to keep commingling these with my regular videos? So maybe I might kind of explore into that other world. And I've skipped Patreon because, I don't know, it just felt too clunky to me. And again, just like turns something into something else that I didn't want it to be. But
an obligation,
yeah,
right? It becomes an obligation.
Yeah, it's like, you know, in high school where your teacher's like, read this book, chapters 1 through 3. You're like, no. But then if you found that book on your own, you would have read the whole thing in like a night.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So it's like, as soon as someone's like, do this, I'm like, no, I don't want it.
Probably not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So we'll see. Yeah. Thank you so much. Seriously.
Yeah, it's always good talking to you, brother.
Yeah. Thanks, Enrique. Appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you to everyone out there. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. And yeah, like, are you ready to kind of play us a little jam, do some more jamming?
Yeah, let's see if
this
will work at the same time. Yeah, let's try it out.
All right.
Let's go. All right, bro.
Cool. I'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks.